Chapter 9. Gibeon. All the kings west of the Jordan, in the hills and foothills, and along the Mediterranean sea coast north toward Lebanon, the Hittites, Amorites, Canaanites, Perizzites, Hivites, Girgashites, and Jebusites got the news. They came together in a coalition to fight against Joshua and Israel under a single command. The people of Gibeon heard what Joshua had done to Jericho and Ai and cooked up a ruse. They posed as travelers, their donkeys loaded with patched sacks and mended wineskins, threadbare sandals on their feet, tattered clothes on their bodies, nothing but dry crusts and crumbs for food. They came to Joshua at Gilgal and spoke to the men of Israel. "We've come from a far-off country. Make a covenant with us." The men of Israel said to these Hivites, "How do we know you aren't local people? How could we then make a covenant with you?" They said to Joshua, "We'll be your servants." Joshua said, "Who are you now? Where did you come from?" They said, "From a far-off country, very far away. Your servants came because we'd heard such great things about God, your God, all those things he did in Egypt, and the two Amorite kings across the Jordan, King Sihon of Heshbon and King Og of Bashan, who ruled in Ashtaroth. Our leaders and everybody else in our country told us, 'Pack up some food for the road and go meet them. Tell them, we're your servants, make a covenant with us.' This bread was warm from the oven when we packed it and left to come and see you. Now look at it, crusts and crumbs, and our cracked and mended wineskins, good as new when we filled them, and our clothes and sandals, in tatters from the long, hard traveling." The men of Israel looked them over and accepted the evidence, but they didn't ask God about it. So Joshua made peace with them and formalized it with a covenant to guarantee their lives. The leaders of the congregation swore to it. And then, 3 days after making this covenant, they learned that they were next-door neighbors who had been living there all along. The people of Israel broke camp and set out. 3 days later, they reached their towns: Gibeon, Kephirah, Beeroth, and Kiriath-Jearim. But the people of Israel didn't attack them. The leaders of the congregation had given their word before the God of Israel. But the congregation was up in arms over their leaders. The leaders were united in their response to the congregation. "We promised them in the presence of the God of Israel, we can't lay a hand on them now. But we can do this. We will let them live so we don't get blamed for breaking our promise." Then the leaders continued, "We'll let them live, but they will be woodcutters and water carriers for the entire congregation." And that's what happened. The leaders' promise was kept. But Joshua called the Gibeonites together and said, "Why did you lie to us, telling us we live far, far away from you, when you're our next-door neighbors? For that, you are cursed. From now on, it's menial labor for you, woodcutters and water carriers for the house of my God." They answered Joshua, "We got the message loud and clear that God, your God, commanded through his servant Moses to give you the whole country and destroy everyone living in it. We were terrified because of you. That's why we did this. That's it. We're at your mercy. Whatever you decide is right for us, do it." And that's what they did. Joshua delivered them from the power of the people of Israel, so they didn't kill them. But he made them woodcutters and water carriers for the congregation and for the altar of God at the place God chooses. They still are. Chapter 10. The 5 Kings. It wasn't long before my master Zedek, king of Jerusalem, heard that Joshua had taken Ai and destroyed it and its king under a holy curse, just as he had done to Jericho and its king. He also learned that the people of Gibeon had come to terms with Israel and were living as neighbors. He and his people were alarmed. Gibeon was a big city, as big as any with a king and bigger than Ai, and all its men were seasoned fighters. Adoni-Zedek, king of Jerusalem, sent word to Hohem, king of Hebron, Piram, king of Jarmuth, Jaffa, king of Lachish, and Deber, king of Eglon. "Come and help me. Let's attack Gibeon. They've joined up with Joshua and the people of Israel." So the 5 Amorite, western kings, the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon, combined their armies and set out to attack Gibeon. The men of Gibeon sent word to Joshua, camped at Gilgal. Don't let us down now. Come up here quickly. Save us. Help us. All the Amorite kings who live up in the hills have ganged up on us." So Joshua set out from Gilgal, his whole army with him, all those tough soldiers. God told him, "Don't give them a second thought. I've put them under your thumb. Not one of them will stand up to you." Joshua marched all night from Gilgal and took them by total surprise. God threw them into total confusion before Israel, a major victory at Gibeon. Israel chased them along the ridge to Beth-horon and fought them all the way down to Azekah and Makkedah. As they ran from the people of Israel down from the Beth-horon ridge and all the way to Azekah, God pitched huge stones on them out of the sky, and many died. More died from the hailstones than the people of Israel killed with the sword. The day God gave the Amorites up to Israel, Joshua spoke to God with all Israel listening. "Stop, sun, over Gibeon. Halt, moon, over Ajalon Valley." And sun stopped. Moon stood stock still until he defeated his enemies. You can find this written in the book of Jasher. The sun stopped in its tracks in mid-sky, just sat there all day. There's never been a day like that before or since. God took orders from a human voice. Truly, God fought for Israel. Then Joshua returned, all Israel with him, to the camp at Gilgal. Meanwhile, the 5 kings had hidden in the cave at Makkedah. Joshua was told, "The 5 kings have been found, hidden in the cave at Makkedah." Joshua said, "Roll big stones against the mouth of the cave and post guards to keep watch. But don't you hang around. Go after your enemies. Cut off their retreat. Don't let them back into their cities. God has given them to you." Joshua and the people of Israel then finished them off. Total devastation. Only a few got away to the fortified towns. The whole army then returned intact to the camp and to Joshua at Makkedah. There was no criticism that day from the people of Israel. Then Joshua said, "Open the mouth of the cave and bring me those 5 kings." They did it. They brought him the 5 kings from the cave: the king of Jerusalem, the king of Hebron, the king of Jarmuth, the king of Lachish, and the king of Eglon. When they had them all there in front of Joshua, he called up the army and told the field commanders who had been with him, "Come here, put your feet on the necks of these kings." They stepped up and put their feet on their necks. Joshua told them, "Don't hold back. Don't be timid. Be strong. Be confident. This is what God will do to all your enemies when you fight them." Then Joshua struck and killed the kings. He hung them on 5 trees where they remained until evening. At sunset, Joshua gave the command. They took them down from the trees and threw them into the cave where they had hidden. They put large stones at the mouth of the cave. The kings are still in there. No survivors. That same day, Joshua captured Makkedah, a massacre that included the king. He carried out the holy curse. No survivors. Makkedah's king got the same treatment as Jericho's king. Joshua, all Israel with him, moved on from Makkedah to Libnah and fought against Libnah. God gave Libnah to Israel. They captured the city and king and massacred the lot. No survivors. Libnah's king got the same treatment as Jericho's king. Joshua, all Israel with him, moved on from Libnah to Lachish. He set up camp nearby and attacked. God gave Lachish to Israel. Israel took it in 2 days and killed everyone. He carried out the holy curse, the same as with Libnah. Horam, king of Gezer, arrived to help Lachish. Joshua attacked him and his army until there was nothing left of them. No survivors. Joshua, all Israel with him, moved on from Lachish to Eglon. They set up camp and attacked. They captured it and killed everyone, carrying out the holy curse, the same as they had done with Lachish. Joshua, all Israel with him, went up from Eglon to Hebron. He attacked and captured it. They killed everyone, including its king, its villages, and their people. No survivors, the same as with Eglon. They carried out the holy curse on city and people. Then Joshua, all Israel with him, turned toward Debir and attacked it. He captured it, its king, and its villages. They killed everyone. They put everyone and everything under the holy curse. No survivors. Debir and its king got the same treatment as Hebron and its king, and Libnah and its king. Joshua took the whole country, hills, desert, foothills, and mountain slopes, including all kings. He left no survivors. He carried out the holy curse on everything that breathed, just as God, the God of Israel, had commanded. Joshua's conquests stretched from Kadesh Barnea to Gaza, and from the entire region of Goshen to Gibeon. Joshua took all these kings and their lands in a single campaign because God, the God of Israel, fought for Israel. Then Joshua, all Israel with him, went back to the camp at Gilgal.